Good evening. Welcome to the premiere of Names Not Numbers, a movie in the making. This production has been almost a year in the making. After seeing an award-winning Names Not Numbers film last Yom HaShoah, our students in grades 6 through 8 have been eager to create their own. Since September, students have dedicated themselves to telling these stories of incredible bravery, strength, resilience, and survival. They have researched higher interviewing skills, learned videography techniques, and have edited footage to retell the survivors' stories. They have shown leadership, empathy, and maturity through the process. I am so incredibly proud of each and every one of you. It has been 78 years since the end of the Holocaust. As we get further away, it becomes increasingly more important to hear, tell, and preserve these stories of survival. It is our responsibility to future generations to record these testimonies so that they will never be forgotten. Thank you, Tova Rosenberg, please stand up, and the entire Names Not Numbers organization for providing our students with this unique educational framework. You have helped them learn skills and lessons they will never forget. And you have allowed them to form relationships that will impact their lives forever. Ms. Fold, please stand up. You had a vision of bringing Names Not Numbers to Park East. You have worked as the coordinator with the Names Not Numbers program to instruct our students on critical background education, guide them through the interviews, and oversee the editing process. You and your students have devoted your time to this project, and tonight is the result of all of your hard work. This project is especially meaningful because of our close ties to our survivors. Judy, we have known each other for many years, back to our Forest Hills days. Your story is an inspiration, and you and Zali Zichronam Livracha have devoted and dedicated so much to the Park East community that it shows no bounds. And thank you for introducing us to your extended family member, John, who has taught us the true meaning of bravery and resilience. John, words cannot describe how much we admire you. Rose, from the moment I met you in Rock Hill, it was love at first sight. Your energy, advice, and sense of humor make you who you are. I know it was not easy coming from Elizabeth, New Jersey, to film with the students, but with Miriam, your daughter, by your side, you can both move mountains. Rose, we wish you a full and speedy recovery. And now it is my pleasure to call upon Cantor Benny to deliver the dedication to our dear friend, Zoli Lefkovits, Zichronam Livracha.
Before we talk about the program, we have a very special mazel tov that happened in our Park East family within the last week, and that is Principal Debbie became a grandma. So mazal tov, we're very, very happy. I also want to welcome those who are joining us on Zoom, including Rabbi and Mrs. Schneier, and all those who could not be here tonight, and many of the survivors who couldn't make it in person but are watching through the marvels of modern technology. Tonight's a very special night. Some of you in the room knew Zoli Lefkowitz. Others didn't, but hopefully in the 2 or 3 minutes that I'll speak with you, you'll gain a better appreciation for who he was. Zoli was an incredible human being. He went through the Holocaust, survived with 9 siblings, took care of his mom pretty much alone, used to go out at night from the ghetto to make sure that they got potato peels so that there was enough food to keep his family alive. But it didn't end when he came to the United States. He made sure that his family was okay, and his family was at the heart of everything that he did. Judy, I'm privileged to be friends with you and your family, as is my wife, Anna. We sat at so many Shabbat dinners together. And Zoli used to tell me the same stories over and over. And there were times that I thought that he simply thought I wasn't so smart, and I didn't remember from time to time. And then I realized that the stories were part of his identity. This is what Zoli carried with him. He didn't allow the Holocaust to define him. He got stronger. He got closer to the land of Israel that he loved so much, and he was so proud to see his family. I want to ask for a moment for the entire Lefkowitz family, including the young couple that got married 1 week ago on Sunday, to please rise for a moment and let us applause. You know, this moment and these kind of moments where families and your family was together was what made Zoli most excited and happy. I will never forget when Zoli called me in the office to tell me that he had a great-grandchild. There was basically the announcement and then about 4 minutes of crying. If you haven't been through what Zoli went through, maybe you wouldn't appreciate what that meant. He came on Shabbos early. He was part of the shul. He cared about the institution. He cared about the children. It mattered to him that there would be a Jewish future. It was part of his soul, part of his destiny, and now part of his legacy. Malky, Jay, Jeffrey, and Marcy. I don't have to tell you about your dad. But I had a little bit of a different angle. You know, and I've said this before, your dad would go from 0 to 60 in about 4 seconds. He would call the shul if I didn't pick up or the rabbi didn't pick up. He would go nuts. And there was only one person that could calm him down. And that's you, Judy. Any time that Zoli was upset about anything, including who Fox News was interviewing that night, you're the person that calmed him down. He loved you, and you loved him. And you taught us, those who know you, what it means to be a loving wife, a loving partner in life. At the very end of Zoli's life, those were the months of COVID where we couldn't visit the hospitals and you had to get permits to just go in, even to spend a few moments. I would go in to see Zoli as he was slowly declining. And there were times that he couldn't understand anymore what I was saying. But if I started to sing to him, he would respond. A week before he passed away at your home, and Judy, you just sent me a video of this, I held Zoli's hand and I sang to him, Avinu Shebashamayim, the song about the state of Israel, and then Hatikva, And then Am Yisrael Chai, and you can see the expression on his face. Perhaps he couldn't speak, but his soul was on fire. The fact, Judy, that you have sponsored this for us and have allowed this school to come together and remember your family's legacy and dedicate this to Zoli is so very meaningful to me personally, to our beloved rabbi, and to the entire community. You know, memory is a fragile thing. We remember differently. We could experience the same situation, but come at it from different angles. The rabbis knew that memory was fragile. That's why we have Yizkor. That's why on the very happiest days of the year, we stop for a moment to remember our families. Because memory doesn't always stay with you. Sometimes we block it out. Sometimes we forget, especially the special moments that we had. And so we come together 4 times a year to say Yizkor, to say that we're going to recommit to remember the legacy of our loved ones. If you turn around for a moment and you look at the back wall, you see hundreds of little lights. And every light remembers a family, remembers a story. Ki ner ha'adam hu. The candle, the light, tells the story of the human being. In 3 minutes or 5 minutes, it's hard to tell the story of Zoli Lefkovits. But please believe me when I tell you that his entire life was dedicated to his family, to the people of Israel, and to our beautiful synagogue and school. Nothing made him happier than walking in the lobby and seeing the children and asking me, what's this one's name? And what's this one's name? And where do you come from? And I remember the kids that came from Queens, they always got to the front of the row with Zali because he just loved it. Didn't forget where he came from. The one story that sticks in my mind is that Zoli told us about the first time he came to Israel as a young man. Some of you kids may not remember, but there used to be a time where they didn't bring this machine all the way to the door, the sleeve as they call it. You had to walk down steps. Sometimes you had to take a bus. Sometimes you had to walk. And Zoli landed in Israel for the very first time. He told me I walked off the steps and I started to cry. And I kissed the ground. And the stewardess standing right behind me said to me, "Why are you crying?" And he said, "I'm home. I know there'll never be another Holocaust." That was Zoli's identity. Am Yisrael Chai, no matter what we go through as a people. It's our place, our homeland that we can rely on. So you, all of you, are Zoli's nachas. And you, the children, all of you smiling, and I saw the preview of the movie, which all of you are going to see shortly, which is just incredible. You are part of Zoli's legacy. And if he would be here, he would smile and thank you. I thank each of you for coming out tonight, and I hope that you will do whatever you can to keep your loved one's memory alive and to remember this wonderful human being that God gave us on this earth, Zoli Lefkowitz. Thank you.
Tell me a fact and I'll learn. Tell me a truth and I'll believe. But tell me a story and it will live in my heart forever. The Names Not Numbers Oral History Film Documentary Project is remembering the stories of the Holocaust and is telling the story of the Holocaust for the world to hear, for the world to learn, and to inspire future generations to combat anti-Semitism and all forms of hatred and intolerance. This unique project is in its 16th year. Over 2,500 survivors and 6,000 students have participated in it worldwide. The students were instructed by teachers and professionals. They learned interviewing techniques from journalists. They learned filming techniques and editing skills from documentary filmmakers. The students interviewed, filmed, and edited the 2-hour interviews with each survivor to make 20-minute oral histories that are compiled in the Names Not Numbers documentary at the school. You're about to view the documentary Names Not Numbers, a movie in the making. This film chronicles the students as they are being trained by the professionals and includes their reflections. In it is embedded approximately 10 minutes from each interview. This is the students' work, their filmed and edited interviews. Through this project, our students are preserving history, and they are the witnesses to the witnesses.
It's very, very important that people know that these are not stories, but this is happened and everybody can learn from it.
We have to hold together as Jews, and we have to work at it and not allow people to forget what happened, and hopefully not allow to have it happen again.
I hope never happen again, and do everything to prevent it. You can do whatever you want if you give yourself a chance to succeed.
Every day we have to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Knowing the steps that led up to the Holocaust prevents that.
In the Holocaust concentration camps, prisoners, they were given tattoos of numbers. And they said, now you're this number and you don't have any name anymore. And it completely destroys their entire past.
I believe that a name is a story because each name is an individual person. So a name is a person's past.
We have personalities, traits, and hobbies, and a life, and not just digits on a page. We often refer to the Holocaust as over 6 million people died, and names not numbers really means we should remember their names and tell their stories.
Each of those 6 million, they had, their own life and personality. They're not just one statistic. It's kind of taking something back.
The first time I heard about the Holocaust, I was maybe 1st, 3rd grade. My great-grandparents on my mother's side escaped before it started.
My grandpa actually escaped from Libya. I also have family from the Netherlands. They actually were killed in the concentration camps.
I never really heard my great-grandparents' stories.
Never again goes hand in hand with never forget. It is important to tell these stories because it is our job to make sure this never happens again.
Names Not Numbers is a program where students all over the world get to work with their peers and their classmates to interview a Holocaust survivor. I really got interested by the idea of actually talking to a Holocaust survivor.
You were all selected because you have what it requires to take on this important responsibility.
I chose to do Names Not Numbers because my grandparents survived the Holocaust, and I believe it's important to help other survivors have their stories known and tell the world what happened.
Well, I heard about all the people who are saying that the Holocaust never happened and that it was being forgotten, and I feel like if we have actual people who have been through it talking about their experiences, it's going to be remembered for a lot longer.
I thought that I could help and it'd be my obligation to participate in this.
A sentence from the Torah from Parashat Azinu that really describes what you will be doing in this project. Zachor Yamot Olam, remember the days of old, but how should you do it? Sha'al avicha v'yegedcha. Ask your fathers, your forefathers, and they will tell you. What you're going to see now is one of the edited interviews.
My name is Moshe Avital. I was born in the shtetl, a town called Bilke.
His story was really touching, and from there I knew that this was going to be a good program and it was going to be meaningful. They said that students my age made it. I was in disbelief. It looks professional, and how could one handle that?
It's intimidating because I want to live up to that standard. I want to make sure that this Holocaust survivor story is told in an amazing and memorable way.
I have watched many interviews with Holocaust survivors, and I thought it would be really cool to do one myself.
The first thing we've got here is preparation, research.
Me and my group researched her. We learned about her home country and town.
We spent a lot of time making questions.
It's kind of 3 stages in my mind with reporting.
A journalist came in to teach us how to interview someone.
So research, and then there's the interview itself, and then after that, either you're writing something up or you're editing the documentary. The interview becomes like this raw material that you can then change and put together in a way that is still faithful to the story.
The journalist told us to try to make questions that will get the most out of the survivor.
We shouldn't ask yes or no questions, because the only answer we'll get is yes or no. We won't get like all the details of the stories.
A good way to do that is to say, describe this, or what was it like when something. But again, try to get them to illustrate it themselves.
I learned that I had to improvise and make new questions based off if the Holocaust survivor said something different.
It's not a script that you need to follow, like, okay, they answer the first one, they're answering the next one, and the next one. You can kind of deviate from that.
At the end, I did a role play with Ivan, and he really helped me, actually. What is your name and where were you born?
My name is Ivan Deleuze.
If we made a mistake, as one would, because it's our first time trying to interview somebody, he would fix us, and it was a very informative experience.
An interview is just kind of a conversation that's being recorded, asking them questions like you would anyone, really. I feel like I'd be very good at interviewing, and I feel comfortable doing it.
I was looking forward to working with the cameras because I haven't done that before. We had a session before the interview where we learned how to use the cameras.
I feel like using the cameras, it's interesting. Like, I never really thought about what goes on behind the scenes. So I really never appreciated how much effort goes into even like a 2-minute report on like the most random topic.
We were taught to keep our subject off-centered of the screen. When your subject is in the center and looking at the camera lens, it makes the watchers, the person who is being filmed, is really talking to the person, whereas the person isn't really watching something.
We also learned about how there should be more space in front of the person from where they're looking than behind them.
That would just look weird because what's behind me.
When the subject is put on the same side of the frame that they're looking, it makes the watchers feel like they're cut off and that the stuff that's behind them is more interesting than the actual person themselves.
I was excited to use the cameras, but I was mostly excited to interview the Holocaust survivor because it's like a once-in-a-lifetime experience. I'm very nervous about the interview. It could go in so many different ways, and I really hope it just all goes well.
I'm feeling very nervous, but really excited.
We've learned a lot about her. I'm really looking forward to meeting her in person, hearing her story directly from her.
I'm feeling very nervous and anxious because I've never really had the chance to talk to a Holocaust survivor, and I'm also really excited because I've never had the chance to talk to a Holocaust survivor, and it's a new opportunity to have in my life.
Hearing the story from the person that actually went through it is a lot more powerful than hearing it from a movie or an article.
When you read about the Holocaust, it's different. You can't see their emotions. You can't really see how they feel.
I'm so glad I have the honor to hear that story one-on-one.
My name is John Wolf. I was born in Transylvania, but I grew up in a country that doesn't exist anymore, Czechoslovakia. I was born in 1928, so I'm 94 now.
Rose Report. I was born on September 16, 1936. I was born in Poland, in a town called Sandomierz. It's one of the oldest towns in Poland.
Judith Lefkowitz. I was born in Budapest, Hungary, July 1941.
I'm an only child. I had a pretty good childhood. The village that we lived in, my father was kind of a pillar of the village. We were what you consider wealthy people. I grew up with a bunch of boys. We were a little clique, a little group. We went to Cheder. We went to public school because the village had public school. But once we finished the public school, we had to go by train to the nearest city to go to high school. My mother's father, my grandfather, he was my pal. I could complain to him about my parents. Sometimes he would say, well, I would do something about it. And sometimes he did. But he was a pretty great guy.
My mother was Mariam. My father was Nuta. My father was the owner of agricultural supplies. My mother was a housekeeper. I had two brothers. The older brother, his name is Feivel. The younger brother, his name was Pinchas. My older brother was diagnosed, according to my diagnosis, spastic cerebral palsy, requiring total care. The younger one, boy, that was only, when I was 4, he was only 2, was a lovely, smiley little boy.
My family was always a Orthodox family. My grandfather had a store which carried really everything. In those days they had food, they had material, they had lumber, they had everything. And it was very, very liked by the people, the non-Jewish people of the town. My grandfather, when he started at age 16, had nothing. He came about at the end of the 18th century when it was pogroms in Poland, and built a real empire. We kept Shabbat. Both of my grandparents did. My grandfathers from my father's side, in fact, they had their own shul.
When the war started and the Germans walked into to my hometown. I was only 4-year-old.
In 1939, the Nazis occupied Prague, occupied the Czech Republic. Within 3 months, we became part of Hungary. The Hungarians were resisting the Nazis of doing bad things to Jews. But within 3 months or so, they started changing. Every Friday, it seemed like the Hungarians would have some kind of a new law, some kind of a restriction of Jewish life.
I know that there was some type of panic in the house. Our housekeeper, who was coming on Friday to our house and was very sweet and friendly, came to the house. This was an apartment. And my father and mother were standing and they said, I'm going to go for a trip with Julia. Her name was Julia, to visit the animals. I always went to the park to see the animals. Julia had a brother, a farmer, about 2.5 hours from the town I live, and the transportation was only a horse car. The family welcomed me. There was a young married couple, and the dog ran to welcome us too, and I was very happy. After a few hours, Julia packed the clothes and left, and I remained with the family for the next few years.
End of 1940-41, this rabbi sent to my father's parents' house, to my grandparents' house, a message: the Germans will come to Hungary too. Build bunkers underneath your house. The Germans came into Hungary March 19, 1944. Why? I know the date because it was my older sister's birthday. She was 6 years old. The Germans started to come into the city. They started to fire, and it was getting a little bit darker. So my sister went to the window and she said to my mother, Mom, look, the whole city is celebrating my birthday. And my mother said, no, my little girl, it's not the city. Unfortunately, the Germans are coming and they are shooting. And this is how the war began in Hungary.
By the time I got to be 13, got bar mitzvah, we wore a yellow star. We no longer went to the synagogue. So my mother had enough flour to bake some cookies. And she spread the word that she's going to celebrate bar mitzvah by people coming to our house.
I was told by the farmer's wife, I'm going to be their daughter. For a while, I emotionally got so upset and depressed that when they mentioned that I should not talk to anybody, not respond, that I stopped talking. I did not talk, didn't say a word for 2 years. I have to admit to you that I was angry at my parents. I became the help. I took care of the kids, diapered them. I brought the wood for the fire. I milked the cow. I fed the chicken and whatever it was to be done. Spring and summer I slept with the animals and the doggy. The dog was my life. He would lay next to me, and when I moved, he would look if I'm okay. At one occasion, when I was working in the gardening, I heard terrible barking, and I noticed that another dog was attacking my dog. So I went to help him, and I squeezed between the wooden wall of the building and the fence, and I didn't notice a sticking big nail, so I ripped my whole leg. The neighbor seen me, grabbed me, and took me inside to the house. So she called the husband, and he said, You know what? This girl is crying like a Jewish kid. When I heard the word Jewish, I got up from the chair and I ran. Till today, I hear the voice of the man. She cries like a Jewish kid. Now, Jewish kids means that he can go to the German being there and say they having a Jewish kids there. So, nobody ever told me that I'm Jewish, and I don't know where this came. Probably somebody was watching me.
Mostly we were afraid of the gendarmes, the police. They used to beat us up. Any small infraction, for example, they would pick somebody, take him to the police station. The morning that we were deported, in other words, that we had to leave our home, I don't know where I got the idea, but I had a little plastic box and I put my father's bar mitzvah watch, an Omega, my mother's engagement ring with a diamond, and my father's wedding ring into that little box. We had no idea whether we ever were going to come back or not, but I hid the stuff.
My father was one of the first one that he got his papers to go into slave labor. My father disappeared. He went down to the bunker very early. They didn't let children down there because there was no air. 47 people in one big room. They had one toilet facility, they had a light, and very little food. They decided, the family, that they're going to give the children out. My grandparents had many apartment houses, so they were given to the Super's family. They knew them, and they said to the Super, listen, they're gonna take us away and take my child, I'll give you a lot of money and raise it just like if it's your own. But my mother said, I'm not giving out my children. So my mother with my sister and another aunt, her sister-in-law with another two children, they took us out to outside of Budapest to the mountains, and we lived like non-Jews. We was at this place for about 6-7 months. They used to go to the church every Sunday. I learned how to make a cross, and we lived like non-Jews, and it was luck. My mother didn't look like a Jew. She had light eyes, light hair. So did my aunt. My name was Roja, which means Rose, Judy, and I had to learn it, and I was only 3.5 years. Many times I said my real name when we was playing with the kids outside in the backyard, and my sister ran to my mother and she says, oh my God, Judy told the kids her real name. So I said, don't worry, she has such an accent, nobody understands what she said.
We were put on a train and shipped out to a ghetto in Hungary. The first 3 days, we slept in a Jewish cemetery. We came late to that ghetto, so we ended up living in an attic. You had to climb up a ladder into the attic where we were housed. Life was very difficult because there was no sanitary places, no water, no food. So we stayed about 2 weeks in this ghetto, and after that we got shipped out to Auschwitz. We were put into these boxcars. It was just my grandmother, my father, my mother, and myself, and 95 other people. There is no room to sit down. You have to stand. Once people died, there was no place to put them. So people used them as benches to sit on. At one point, my grandmother asked my father, what's going to happen to us? and my father said, we're all going to die. The doctor gave him some poison ampoules. By the time we got to Birkenau, he told my mother, now is the time, if we want to die, this is the place that we should take the poison. And my mother said, I don't know, ask the boy. And he asked me, are you ready to take the poison? And I said, well, we survived up to now, maybe we'll survive the rest of this. For many years, and even today, I often think that we should have taken the poison, because things were not good in these camps. But I didn't.
My father was killed. My older brother was killed in front of everybody. And my mother was taken to Treblinka, which the camp nobody ever heard about. My younger brother was taken by a priest and hidden in a church in the basement. One of the Polacks, who was member of the church, knew that. The German who walked into the town where the church was, were told that if you come and give us one Jew, you get 100 zlotych. That was to buy a candies. And one of these neighbors or the worker in the church told the German that the priest is hiding Jewish kids. So my brother was killed, 3 other boys, and the priest too. So my family didn't exist.
The doors opened, and these people that were prisoners in prisoner clothes, mostly Polish Jews, were screaming, "Los, los." Los is a German word which means hurry up, hurry up. They were pointing at me and said, how old? And my father said, 16. Said 18. My father said, no, 16. And the guy said, 18. Say 18. My mother and all women were separated. All men were separate. Old people were separated. Little children went to the old people. We were taken to the showers. There we took off all our clothes. We came out of the showers. We were in a room where there were big windows. We had to wait for about 2 hours, and my father and I stood in front of the windows, and we saw my grandmother and my 2 little cousins. She was in the group that was going to the gas chamber. The number A51758. As soon as we left the bath, the first thing that we went to is to where they tattooed us. And we were kind of fortunate that we were gotten tattooed, because those people who didn't get tattooed went to the crematorium.
The superintendent from my grandparents was living there, who had a grandson who was a big Nazi, and that was very dangerous. And one time he came to see the grandmother, and it was getting dark. They were sitting in the kitchen, and the whole apartment wasn't big, but a room and a kitchen, and it was dark. And he saw an electric clock, like that measures the electricity, and that clock was going, because downstairs they were using one light. So he asked the grandmother, Grandma, everywhere is dark. How come that machine is going? So she was very vivid. And she said to the grandson, yes, I saw it too. And Monday morning, first thing next morning, I'm going to call the company. And from that on, when he left, he told the people downstairs, he sent some message. From now on, I'm going to have a big broom by the door. If somebody comes in, I will do 2 noises, and you cannot breathe. Can you imagine? You cannot breathe. You must be, because we can be reported.
My father and I got selected to work in a stone quarry. One of the prisoners came to us and asked my father, how would you like to have a better assignment, work in a laundry? I think that's probably what saved us. They used to have these midnight arrangements where they lined people's up and the SS pointed, you go right, you go left. One went straight to the crematorium next day and the other went to work. Because my father and I worked at night, we avoided what they called the selections.
A few weeks before the war was over, the Russian came in, and then my mother said that I'm afraid of the Russians. My mother put us on horse and wagons or whatever, buggies, and they walked into Budapest. One of my aunt already came up from the bunker to welcome us, to greet us. And she said, there is no way that you can come down with the kids. There is no place. We have hardly any food. And my mother said, I was out for 7 months without my husband, without the family. I just cannot do it, not another hour. The first time when they let us down for a few hours, it was Friday afternoon. And there was like a very old wood ladder going down the step. There was no steps, this ladder, we was just going down. And when I got down, I saw a very, very long table with a white cloth. That table was my father and my uncle's bed, because that's where they slept for 7, 8 months. I saw my father that I didn't see for 7, 8 months, and with this white tablecloth and everything, I thought that I am in heaven.
In 1945, the Russian walked in. The Russian army was in a very bad shape, physically, mentally, and equipment. So when they walked into the farm, what they were looking for is to take the horses. The dog became furious, jumping and barking, and then I came and the farmer from the house to see what's going on. And the dog would not let the soldier to go in. So he took a pistol and shoot him on the spot in front of me. My dog was gone.
We got to Auschwitz early July. We left Auschwitz because the Russians were approaching towards Christmas. They lined us up, and those who could walk, we were taken to Lefkowitz. Many people didn't make it. I was on my way out too. My father and one of my friends, Paul Kraus, grabbed me by the arm because I wanted to lay down. And they dragged me along. And as they dragged me along, I finally woke up and I could walk again. After about 4 days, we ended up in a place called Oranienburg for almost a week and a half. My father was in pretty bad shape, and he thought he was going to die. He disappeared, and it turns out that he went to what's called the infirmary. I never saw him until liberation. From Oranienburg, we went on another train, and the train went to a place called Flossenburg. And in Flossenburg, I stayed about 10 or 12 days, and then I got liberated.
I understood from the discussion between the farmer and his wife that the war ended. The farmer said he's going to the market to sell his thing, and he's taking me too. I was so anxious to get the pretzel that I would do anything. And all of a sudden, a few strange men appear around the horse carriage that I was sitting. They took a picture, somebody took a picture, and I didn't make any of it. We went back to the farm, and as we were traveling back, he said, "Oh, we go soon again. You will get another pretzel." Okay.
I actually got on a train that went to Prague. My mother and my father survived. I met them all in Prague. It turns out that after my mother came back, she and about 6 of the other women from the village came back and lived in my father's house. And when my uncle came with the Russian army, my mother told him, "You know, we may find something in this oven if we could break it apart." We had no idea whether we ever were going to come back or not, but I hid the stuff. They broke the thing apart, the oven apart, and they found a little box.
We arrived to my mother's house, which was also a very big house, and some non-Jews lived there. And of course, what they asked, "What are you doing here?" And this was the part that hurted my mother the most, because she grew up with these people. She did not have a Jewish friends besides her family and cousins maybe, but all her friends were non-Jewish, and they were the best friends. And everybody loved my grandfather because he used to give them credit in the store, and they loved him. And suddenly they almost asked my mother, "Who are you? Why you came? You came back already?" You know, they thought everybody is dead. And so finally, after begging, maybe they gave them money too, I don't know. I remember we got a little room in the back, just a little room. And my father would go to the train station every single morning when the train came, that they thought that maybe some family members will come. Unfortunately, it was only my grandfather who came back much, much later. But they did come back, a few people from the town. My mother set up like a soup kitchen.
My grandmother was not notified through Hayas, which is the Jewish organization, that I am alive, and they need for money to pay the farmer for keeping me during the war. He obviously told them that I would not be given back unless he's paid. The farmer was paid, and I never went back. My mother's cousin, she was directed by my grandmother in the United States to take me away from the farmer, and I would stay with her till papers will be done to get me to the United States. They were a young couple, Shortly after I lived with them, they had a son, Adam, who I consider my brother. I spent with them quite a few years.
Today we are here to discuss the concept of emunah and faith through the Holocaust. To carry that emunah when you have the biggest attack on the Jewish people in our history requires an extraordinary amount of strength. I think that's another important part of speaking about faith in the Holocaust, because we're not just speaking about keeping your faith, we're also speaking about keeping it in the face of someone trying to destroy it. Let's say you're a child who survived the Holocaust. Ask yourself, however old you are now, 11, 12, 13, if you survived, you were probably in a forest, a monastery, a slave labor camp. What happens after those 5 years of disconnect? Physically and spiritually, they were like, who am I? What? I don't even remember. How old were you 5 years ago? You were 8. Imagine if the last time you opened the Siddur was when you were 8. Does that seem like a long time? Yeah, you'd be like, what direction do I even open this from, right? So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about people who really got disconnected. And so what does that tell you about how you treat people who came out of those 5 years and said, no, I'm going back to my people. I'm gonna, build a Jewish family. I'm gonna go back to my community. That's a really big deal, right? We sometimes take a lot of things for granted. Don't take things for granted. The fact that we can live as who we are is an amazing thing. It also gives us hope. Sometimes you read in the news too much bad news. There's an anti-Semitic attack here. There's someone who said something mean there. It gives you the ability to say, it's okay, we'll manage. We have to fight that person and make sure that, there's no hate being put out in this world, but it's okay. We've overcome much, much more difficult things, and Be'ezrat Hashem will be okay. It also gives you that perspective.
We came to New York in 1946 by boat, and my uncle waited for us at the pier, and he was the only relative that we knew of that was alive. And we lived with him for almost a year.
I applied to medical school and I was accepted. The only good side of the communist regime in Poland was that school is free. So I was living in the hospital for a year and worked there in a lab, went for English courses. Through help from Hayas and other people, I was able to get temporary stay in the United States.
The Russians came in, they was already at the border, and they occupied Hungary. The borders opened up, and that's when I left. President Eisenhower was the president of the US, and he gave 30,000 Hungarian refugees. He allowed us to come in. After examination, we got health examination. They checked that you was not communist and your records are clear and everything. Then we got papers that we can stay here. And my parents started all over again.
I also met a lot of people, Polish survivor, and I was able to socialize a little bit, and that's when I met my future husband. So a year later, I was married.
We lived in Manhattan. I went to high school. I didn't speak English, of course, but I learned English.
It was not easy, but we were very happy. We lived on Nissen Parkway, right across the Chabad Rabbi.
I moved to New Jersey, to Elizabeth, take courses, preparation for medical state exams. Meantime, I had 2 children.
I studied electrical engineering, and I became an electrical engineer.
Finally, I got my medical license and started working initially in Santa Barnabas in Livingston, New Jersey. Took residency at Rusk Institute in NYU and worked for 17 years as attending at St. Vincent Hospital in Manhattan.
We worked very hard, and piece by piece, bit by bit, my parents got whatever we needed and never got any other help from anybody. And we were just very happy that we are here and we can be Jewish.
I'm very emotional today seeing you. I said to myself and my kids, especially my daughter who is here, I don't want to go through that. I don't want to remember. I don't know what was right or wrong. It's gone. You cannot hate all the time. You cannot be happy all the time. You have to compromise your life. But I always is positive, and I said to myself, I can do it. I can do it.
I think that everyone should learn more about the Holocaust, and I'm very lucky to be able to spread more information about Holocaust survivors' stories and what they went through.
You need to really hear their stories. Well, not even hear them, you need to listen to their stories. You need to know them.
I'm glad that I was participating in this. I really feel like it's going to make an impact on people's knowledge.
There's still anti-Semitism in the world, and we want to end anti-Semitism, and we want world peace.
Go to Auschwitz and see the place, and go to Israel, to Yad Vashem, and go to the children's pavilion where you hear all the voices of the children crying. They will know that yes, things like this happen. All of you will tell the world that this can never happen again, what happened to us.
Life sometimes is a hard way to go through, but you can survive if you have a good will to do something good.
It is my philosophy that hating people is not worthwhile, because hate brings nothing but pain.
This program honors your late husband, who is also a survivor. What would he say if he was here?
He had one saying, Am Yisrael Chai, and it says on his tombstone too. He was a very, very big Zionist, so he says, Am Yisrael Chai.
Thank you. Thank you so much to everyone for being here and being a part of this special program. In the words of our students, never take a life for granted, never give up, have faith in the face of darkness and keep moving, never forget, and show the world. These are only some of the lessons the students of Names Not Numbers learned as they worked on this project. I am so very proud of you for taking on this responsibility and preserving these testimonies forever. Thank you to Tova Rosenberg and the whole Names Not Numbers crew. It was such a pleasure working with you. I want to thank Principal Debbie for being my partner in this program and for saying yes to everything I asked to do. Cantor Benny, thank you for your ongoing support and for making this incredible screening possible tonight. Tonight is about the survivors, Judy, Rose, and John. It is about you and your stories of survival. We cannot thank you enough for your willingness to participate in this project, your patience, and for your bravery. You have inspired all of us. We have gifts for each of you. I would like to call up Judy and her students. Included in the gift is a DVD of the entire unedited footage of your interview. It's almost 2 hours long. So please come up, Judy and Judy's students. Come on up. Although Rose cannot be here with us tonight, she FaceTimed with her group of students earlier, and her son David is here. David, can you please join us to receive Rose's gift, as well as Rose's students? Rose's students, come. Thank you. Unfortunately, John also cannot be here tonight, but I would like to ask his group to come up and join me for a photo. Come on. Thank you so much.
Good evening, parents and grandparents of our day school, Parky Synagogue members, friends of all. All of us are very much concerned about Holocaust denial and widespread anti-Semitism, not only in the United States, Europe, but right here in New York City. It's reassuring for a Holocaust survivor like myself and Holocaust families to know that never forget is really a commitment on the part of younger people, next generations, when the eyewitnesses will no longer be survivors, no longer be with us. So it's gratifying that our 6th and 8th graders, 6 to 8, they actually made it a project to study the Holocaust, to study the life of Holocaust survivors. They are a guarantee, unlike the millennials and G generations, 18 to 49% have no clue what the Holocaust is all about. There's a survey conducted by both Pew and also the Claims Conference, leading Jewish organizations. So I want to thank our dear friend and benefactor, Zoli Lefkovits, for sponsoring this project. A project that was so ably guided by Kristen Full, who made it a personal project with her students. Our principal, Debbie Rockland, and also Heather Benny, the overall producer of this very important message to our community. What I want to say is really Holocaust survivors are made it out their obligation to pay back for survival. And Judy Lefkowitz's husband, partner in life, my dear friend, Zoli Lefkowitz, my Hungarian friend from Debrecen, with wisdom and heart and sacrifice and emunah, tried to not only rebuild his life, but he made sure that he was always there for family, for his children, Jeffrey and Marseille, Jay and Malky, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, for his friends. Above all, a passionate Jew, support of Torah, cantorial arts, above all, a Zionist in the truest fashion, passionate about Israel and support of Israel. This is a role model who instilled in his children life, continuity. He would always say, Am Yisrael Chai. The name Lefkowitz is not obliterated. If anything, from generation to generation, that name, Lefkowitz, is carried forth like the Ner Tamid, the eternal light that is shining above Judy and the entire family. So, a role model, Holocaust survivor, made a contribution not only to his own, to perpetuate pride in the Jewish heritage, but also to be an inspiration to others to follow. So we are before Passover when we deal with the historical fact from Avdut leCherut, from oppression, from slavery to freedom. And because of so many Holocaust survivors and their children and their grandchildren, Israel has been given a new lease on life, which we are privileged to celebrate the 75th anniversary this coming year. So to all of you, l'chaim, to life, and Pesach Sameach, much love.
Before we conclude the program, I'd like to ask you all to stand up to sing the Hatikvah. And then from there, please join us for a collation in the lobby. Thank you all for coming this evening. thank you for joining us, and please join us outside for a collation in the lobby.